Hello and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. I am Reverend Grenetta Mason, aka Reverend G, and I'm here every Monday night bringing you conversations with special guests. My guests, they come from all walks of life. They have many different perspectives on life, love, and spirituality. We talk about spirituality from a practical point of view. How does it support you in your everyday life? What tools do you have in your spiritual toolkit that you can use when you're maybe sad or when you need some strength and some kind of support to make it through? What are your go to tools? And we talk about spiritual practices that help us make it through day by day. And with so much going on, we need a lot of support these days in just staying sane. And one of my topics is really talking about mental health and how do we get the support that we need to just continue and be in joy, because I would love to support everybody in just finding joy and being happy, living your best life. Every day, I have daily inspirations on Facebook and on Instagram. On Facebook, I'm Reverend Grenetta Mason, and on Instagram, I'm Rev Grenetta. So follow me every day for a little dose of inspiration. Tonight, I have a really special guest, Lavette Kingston. Lavette, I say, is an entrepreneur because I've seen her and grown with her in many phases of her life. So I'm excited to have her join us tonight on the show. Hey, Lavette. How are you?
Hey, Granada.
I'm happy that I can have you on the show tonight. And
Thanks,
I was
thanks for
thinking
having me.
earlier, I was like, how I've known you a long time in my Harlem family, right? And I remember many years ago when coming up here when you had the hair salon, and I was trying to think through, when I have guests, I think through all the different things that the time that I've known you and the things that we've gone through. And I thought about, I first met you at the hair salon, right? And then it's like, what, 30 years later? I was like, oh my God, 30 years later, right? Here we are. So let's talk about what some of the things that you've been doing. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is, as an entrepreneur, you've gone from having your own bed and breakfast, doing the hair salon, and now currently, let's talk about what you're doing with transit. I know you got all that on the background, but how did you get to transit, work up for transit at this
Whoa. Okay, where do I start with that?
point?
I at the time the market, the hair market was beginning to take a turn. Um,
Mm,
my customers were the economy was going down. They began to take buyouts on their jobs. They
mm,
were moving out of the state. A couple of them had passed. It was just, I saw a shift in the beauty industry. Um,
mm,
Also, social media began to skyrocket.
mm,
YouTube and different social media platforms came into play, and people began to um, pick up their computer and learned how to do self beauty cares and different regimens on their own. So the market began to shift, and I said, I don't know how much longer I'll be able to survive in the industry doing it the way that I had been doing it for so long. And I wasn't computer savvy, or YouTube, Facebook, wasn't really out yet.
mm,
So it wasn't really a market for me to gear towards putting myself out there on social media and marketing that way, the way that it is now. Um,
mm,
so I started, I said, well, at the end of the day, let me start looking for a job. I needed health benefits. I had a kid that had, he had needs, and
mm,
Medicaid wasn't going to cut cut it for me.
Mm.
So I started applying for jobs, and I applied for, any and everything, state, federal government, anything that was out there. I started applying for. And transit called me, and when
Mm.
they called me for a track worker. I said, Lord, I'm not used to no laboring work, but they called me and they hired me quickly, and that was at Staten
Mm.
Island. And I
Mm.
took the job. My mother said, "You gonna be on those tracks? You gonna be a track worker? You don't know nothing about that." I said, "I know how to work, and I can be taught." So I went
Mhm.
for it, and I started out as a track worker,
Wow. In the
and
tunnels and
now
stuff
today,
working?
sorry.
I said you were in the tunnels working on the tracks.
Yeah, that's where I started. Not so much in the
Mhm.
tunnels because I'm in Staten Island, so our
Okay.
railroad is outside.
Okay.
But yeah, still tracks nonetheless. It's just not in
Mhm.
the tunnels. Outside environment, which I was okay with. It actually was better for me because I have a big phobia of rats. So that was one of the
Mhm.
things that I didn't really have to worry about being out in Staten Island. But I didn't know at the time when I applied for the job, I didn't know what I was coming up against. I didn't know what obstacles I was facing when I took
Mhm.
the job. It wasn't until I actually got hired that I said, okay, I'm out in the elements. I can breathe fresh air. I'm not in the
Mm.
tunnels, ingesting those black fumes and things like that. So, I thought it was a better fit for me. I was the first African American female track worker hired in Staten Island.
Wow.
And within a few years of being in that position, um, I got the opportunity to become a track inspector.
A
So
track.
I went and studied in Brooklyn
Mhm.
and became a track inspector,
Oh, okay.
which was short lived because I then again put in for another position as a train
Mhm.
dispatcher. And
Oh,
that's my current position right now.
oh, okay. So, yeah, it's so that's interesting how you were able to take advantage of all the you got in. We talk about sometimes you have to get in a position and then see where you can go from there. And you were willing to say, I'm gonna try this track work. It always reminds me of how you did everything in my apartment, right? And I would just sit around and say, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that. But I love that you were willing to take the track work or work, not even knowing, right? And to see how you went from that to where you are now is really good for me to even for people to understand, even young people who want to dive right into the jobs and right into everything without thinking about getting in and then moving from that point on. So that's pretty cool. I love that. And I had no idea that the beauty industry was changing, because we're talking about pre-COVID, right? When
Absolutely.
you saw all of the changes, and it's interesting too to think about how social media also impacted, right? That whole industry, the whole hair, people could go and do it themselves, right? As I think about it, and then access to all
Yes,
kind of wigs and all kind of hair and all of that. You just don't think about it. The impact on the business. So it was pretty cool. When you so how is the so I remember the beginning of the bed and breakfast when you guys did all of that. How is that going now from I mean I can't remember how many years ago we did that, and what's been the shift? Because I
Oh,
know you've been in Harlem your whole life, so I know you've seen Harlem shift and shift and shift, right?
yeah. Born and raised here in Harlem, actually in the same community that I'm currently living in right now. Um, quite a big change from when I was a young girl. When we embarked on the bed and breakfast industry, it was just on a whim. My mom had just completed a major renovation in one of her brownstones, and we had the space, and you know, we didn't have tenants at that time. So we had to be creative and come up with a way for her to help pay her mortgage. Um, the mortgage was ridiculously high, and this is coming from a person who didn't previously have a mortgage on the property. So we took out a mortgage to do the renovation, and we just didn't have the tenants. People weren't coming in at the time, based on the market, what our expectations on what we knew we can get for our units. So my siblings and I, we collectively came up, and there was a demand and a need in Harlem for bed and breakfasts. People were coming in by the bus loads. You can, in any given day, see dozens of sightseeing buses and tours, street tours, people walking the community, and doing tours up and down Harlem, up and down Lenox Avenue. So we put our funds together and we went shopping, and we bought furniture and mattresses, everything from slippers to bathrobes, towels, and um, hair dryers, and everything that you would find in a high-end hotel. We supplied. We stocked ourselves up, and we just stepped out on faith, and we made it happen. This was the beginning of Airbnb. We were one of the first um, residents in Harlem to advertise on Airbnb, and we did quite well. Um, uh, it was good. It was lucrative. We got my mom in a position where she felt comfortable. But then also a lot of work, and we were doing it all on our own. My siblings and I still having full-time jobs, turning sheets, turning beds. You know, it was a lot on us. We did it for quite a few years, and then we eventually wind up getting tenants. But the bed and breakfast, it was another industry that I was able to that I was blessed enough to be able to say, and it was funny because my mom, that's what she did when, growing up. My mom, she worked at the Paramount Hotel for years before they actually closed. And we would go down and she would put us in little rooms and we would stay down there with her until she got off of work at 11 o'clock at night, take the train uptown. And, that's where we grew up, in the hotel in the laundry room. So my mom said, I didn't work hard all my life to turn back now to change sheets. She was like, if that's what y'all want to do, y'all can do it. But I'm not flipping no sheets. I'm not making no beds. I'm not doing no laundry. And we said, yeah, if you were able to feed us and clothe us and put us through school, we can do this. You don't have to change the sheets. We got this. We'll hold it down. And we did what we had to do, and it was very profitable for us. And then it just began to be too much, and to have people come in and do the quality of work that we were doing on our own, it was really hard to find a good help people, to actually get on their hands and knees and scrub those tiles, and to really upkeep the standard of the quality of rooms that we had in units in our bed and breakfast. It was really hard, to find somebody to be able to keep up with the way we were doing it. So we eventually got tenants, and now we're landlords, and it is what it is. But it was a blessing. It was a great opportunity to be able to get into that industry and see, again, how being an entrepreneur in different fields. Because once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. It doesn't
Right.
matter what, once you have that burning desire in your gut, it doesn't matter what way you branch out on business. If you have a business mind and can venture out on business, it doesn't matter what you're selling, or what
Right.
your
Your business
what your
is.
hustle is. You can make it happen.
Yeah. And you
Absolutely.
have that experience with the hair salon, right? And being able to have other people in the salon. So the business skills that you're talking about, they go across no matter what it is. It's the same skills. I love your mom, and I remember always looking up to her for having like 4 or 5 Harlem buildings, right? And you come to Harlem,
Hmm.
she had like 1 floor. And I was always like, wow, right? And she was like the neighborhood queen with all those Harlem buildings. And I looked up to that because Harlem started to turn over, right? And as it started to turn over, I was always very proud of her being a Black woman in the community with what, 4 buildings, right here on Lenox Avenue, 120th Street. So that was really inspiring for me, and I always wanted to find out how she did it. I was like, "Oh, I want this," and she was like, "Oh, Granetta, I think it's a bit late for you." That's how I live in Harlem today. Your mother gave me the application. She goes, "Go get in that building over there," right? And she put the application in my hand. So I owe owning this place and being in Harlem to your mother because I wouldn't have known anything about it. So it's been, and I've been here for 20 years. It's interesting that 20 years went so fast. Can you believe 20 years already? Um, so I owe that to her, and I always look up to her, and she really did her thing here in the community. And then we watched this shift, right? We watched all of the, like, 120th Street, all of that, right? We saw it just shift, shift, shift. Because I can remember the beginning days of the shift, right?
Yes, yes.
So what do you think of Harlem now, Levat? Because you was from a child. I mean, you saw many shifts, I would say, in the years that you've been a kid and through all the changes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been through quite a few shifts in Harlem's. I remember walking through blocks of abandoned buildings and walking through neighborhoods drug infested and everything from dope to crack, riveting our neighborhoods and affecting homes, including, ripping through families. So many of my friends, so many, of my family members have been victims of, the streets of Harlem. So to see where we are now is it's really not a surprise to me. You've always heard that it was going to take place.
Mhm.
Um, it's not really a surprise, but um, it's still it's still Harlem. It still has its feel. A couple of
Mhm.
people, I believe, bought into the experience thinking that it was going to be this big, dramatic shift.
Mhm.
Somebody gave them a cup of Kool-Aid and they drank it, and it cost them $1.5 million,
Mhm.
$1.2 million for these are apartments, for
Mhm.
2 bedroom apartments, for three
Mhm.
bedroom apartments.
Mhm.
And at night, they still um, have people sitting on the stoops. In the
Mhm.
summertime, they can still hear their loud music. Um,
Mhm.
at any given time, you can walk through a neighborhood and you still have cookouts and um, families joining and celebrating life. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think that they drank the Kool-Aid. Somebody told them that the Harlem experience was going to be something more than they thought that it was going to be. And
Mhm.
they bought and they also sold. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And went back to their suburban lives in the suburbs or,
Mhm.
back out of state. But the few that were able to stick around, they're still here. And you walk the neighborhoods now, we have outside cafes and diners. You know,
Mhm.
we're able to enjoy the culture.
Yeah.
There's so much Black excellence here in Harlem, and the diversity is really, is really climbing up there. It's great. I mean, I enjoy it. Um,
Mhm.
we it's still kind of shaky with
Mhm.
our neighbors and stuff. We still, they're not as warm and welcoming as we are as a people. But I
Mhm.
also think it's because of the unknown, you know.
Mm. Mhm.
You know, but I want to chuck it up to being the unknown because I mean we've been neighbors for a long time. Some speak, some don't.
Mm.
Um, you know, it is what it is. But
Mhm.
as a people, I think we're also forgiving and loving as well. So it's you know, they're here, they're in more or less our neighborhood, so it's not like we have to, you know, bend over to accommodate them, and they don't
Mhm.
have to bend over to accommodate us either. We just, you know, we live in a neighborhood, we just have to get along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, I've also made I just brought this up to a friend of mine the other day about starting to start going back to the community board meetings, because I
Mhm.
used to attend when I had the business. I used to attend the community board meetings and used to be a little bit more active because I had a business in the community. And I think that now it'll be a great time to start becoming more active and find out exactly what's going on in the neighborhood, because it's a lot of things going on that we just don't know about. And the only way you'll find out is if you be a part of these meetings and be
Because
a
I
part of
know
what's
they
going
closed
on in the
up
community.
that whole 120th Street between Lenox and Fifth. It became a big playground, right? Where they blocked it off. I'm saying they, because I don't know if we got to block off a whole street, right? And it's just every weekend, bands are out there, the kids are out there. Have you been over? Do you go over there?
That's right across, and I think that happened during the pandemic as one of those safe streets that they had. So it was
Oh,
just as simple as probably applying for it, and you know,
and
you put
getting it
yourself out
right.
there, you ask for it, and you get it. And it's like
Right.
every day from a certain hour, that street is closed off, and that is amazing because that's 120th Street is actually the only block that you can go from east to west straight across. So
And
for
it's
them to cut off
yeah,
that particular area, it
yeah,
says a lot. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So to have that particular block closed off right around Morris Park, it says a lot, and it's like that every day from a certain hour. They shut it down in the morning, they open it back up late in the evening, and it's been like that since the beginning of the pandemic.
Mm,
And I don't see it, you
change.
know, opening up anytime soon. I think that whatever grant or whatever they applied for, they
Mm-hmm.
got it, and I mean, I think it's great. The kids are able to go over there and play and, you know, do whatever they got to do. But hey, it is what it is, and that's another,
Mm-hmm.
you know, example of knowing what's available to you
Mm-hmm.
in your
Being aware.
community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Because somebody
Mm-hmm.
had some information and somebody went and you know, filled out a piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
and asked for what they wanted, and they were granted, you know, and it's just that simple. But if you don't
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't know. And the
Right.
only way for
Exactly.
you to know is to put yourself out there and get that information and find out exactly what, you know, what it is out there that you can get.
Mm-hmm. And the community board is a good way because they know what's going on in the community. Yeah, that's really
Yeah, because a
cool.
lot of the things that get pushed, a lot of things that get pushed in your neighborhood goes through the community board.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't attend, I mean, and you don't, you know, either you're for it or you're against it. But if you don't go to the meetings and find out what's being put on the tables for approval,
Mm-hmm.
it just get passed. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because they take it as nobody's, you know, opposed to it. So it just gets passed. So you go and you walk around and you say, well, how did this happen? Or how did that happen? Or, you
Mm-hmm.
know, how did, you know, how was this able to get put here? Or why is this closing? Or, you know what I'm saying? Your
Mm-hmm.
community board,
Mm-hmm.
your community board.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it is pretty interesting as we think about how Harlem has changed and shifted over, I would say, the 20 years that I've lived here. Um, the change, because our building was the first building here, right? And now all over
Hmm.
Harlem.
Hmm. Right.
Um,
Yes.
yeah. Um, I know that you have, I was talking about earlier, you have a 30-year-old and a 17-year-old, right? Um, wow. And
And two grandkids.
kids to boot, right? I wanted to talk about, the parenting of, I mean, in of a 30-year-old, and now it's post COVID, and a 17-year-old, right? Prior to COVID, right? I'm sure it was a whole different experience. And as I think about it, talk about how you got your son through that. He was 15 at the time, because I'm always interested in parents and how they deal with their teenagers, right? At the time that the school shut down, right? And then where are you now? How did that go for you for a 15-year-old
Oh, Jesus, that was the worst. I mean, and we're still living the aftermath of
man?
the educational process during COVID.
Mm,
My son is 16 years old, ADHD, hyperactive. That homeschooling process was the worst experience of his life.
oh,
Um,
okay.
he's just not that kid you can put in front of a computer screen
Mm-hmm.
and expect for him to benefit from the lesson.
Mm,
um my days off of work, I'll be home, he'll be at the dining room table in class, and I'll get up and I'll prepare him breakfast or whatever. I turn around, he's in the kitchen with me. I'm like, you're supposed to be in class.
mm-hmm.
But holding conversations. I'm like, you have to focus. It was just so hard for him to grasp the concept that
Mm,
even though you're home, you're supposed to be in class. Just to have him sit down and do a full day, the hours were extremely long. It
mm,
was no redirecting or no, it was just really stressful for him. And now that
mm,
he's back in the building, um, I think it's a lingering effect. So
mm,
he's over the whole schooling process right now. He's just like the traditional educational system. He's just over it right now. He's like done with it. So we're in the process now of trying to find him alternative means of getting his high school diploma. He's
mm,
insisting on getting it. He's insisting on getting his high school diploma, and we encourage it. But the school setting that he's in now is not a good fit for him. He needs
mhm,
to be challenged in other ways. So that's what we're researching now on the best possible fit for him to get through these last few years of high school.
mhm,
But he's not that kid that can just sit down at a desk and you know, all day, and the pandemic really brought that out of him. So
mhm,
it's a struggle. It's a struggle, but every day he gets up and he gets dressed and he goes to school. And that's the one thing I'm grateful for, that he's still, insistent on making it happen. Yeah, he's not giving up. So,
mhm,
we encourage it as well, because you got to get that paper. You got to get that paper.
mhm.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I know some alternative schools and stuff we could talk about, right? Because at my school the programs are free, but it's the GED that they give, right? At my school, right? But we offer free training, right? Well, but he's young. You have to be 18. He's only 16, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
he still has some school, but there are some alternative schools that may work for him, right? But it's like it sounds like he's just not challenged enough, right, in the current situation, right?
Yes, and that's another thing, because he's really bright in his own way, and he
Mhm,
questions things. And
mhm,
to be able to be in an environment where you question and you're not just being talked to and taught is
mhm,
is so important. And he challenges. And I think that's, and what we explain to him is school is an environment that allows you to be taught. You have to be learned how to be taught. You know what I mean? Ask
Mhm.
those questions, challenge it. You know what I'm saying? And he does just that. He's very hands-on, very articulate. Um,
Mhm.
he expresses himself very well. He knows what he wants.
Mhm.
Um, he knows what he wants. He's very strong-minded and strong-willed. He's a little bit inconsistent. He can
Mhm.
be a little bit unorganized, a lot of unorganized actually.
Mhm.
But those are things that, well, I think will also come, as he gets older and can focus in. So we try to teach him little, techniques and little things to help manage his impulsivities and his organizational skills and things like that. Because um, when I was growing up, we didn't have diagnoses, and there weren't no diagnoses and all of these things. You know what I'm saying? I got diagnosed with ADHD only because of him. And at that time, I was well into my adulthood, so I learned and I trained myself
Mhm.
to do little things to help me get through school. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Um,
You weren't
right.
aware, you said you weren't aware all along throughout that you were ADHD until you.
No, I was never diagnosed as a child. I
Mhm.
was never diagnosed as a child.
Mhm.
I now that I'm an adult and I know the symptoms, and I can say that yeah, I was, I didn't just become ADHD as an adult. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? I
Mhm.
had to have had it as a child, but I was never diagnosed as a child. But I had to
Mhm.
learn techniques and had to learn things to help me become a
Mhm.
better person. I had to learn organizational skills. I had to learn how to do things and be consistent. I wrote things down. I had calendars. I had organizers because without those
Mhm.
things, I would just be all over the place. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
And those are techniques that have helped me. So those are things that I'm trying to, instill in him and, help him to get himself where he needs to be. And some days are better than others, but he's
Mhm.
made such an improvement. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel with him because at first it was like pulling teeth to get him to
Mhm.
do certain things, and but now it's gotten a lot better, a lot better.
Do they prescribe drugs for this? Or I love the things that you were saying. You were able to support yourself for a long time through organizational skills. Or did they prescribe drugs
For
for him?
for me or him?
For either one of y'all, ADHD, yeah.
I I was never on medication. No, I
Okay.
was never on medication. He had taken medication for a short period of time.
Mhm.
Um, and when he was actually on the medication, he was a student, you know.
Mhm.
This is when he was he did 3 years of military school
Mhm.
in Camden, South Carolina. He did 3 years of military school, and at that time he was on ADHD medication. Um, but once he returned home, we weaned him off the medication for more reasons than others, but
Mhm.
that's another story. But we weaned him off the medication and you know let him go without it. So now we're in the process now of putting him back on it at his request. He requested
Mhm.
that he get put back on it. um
Mhm.
so we're in the process now of you know, doing our research to try and see, where we can get him the assistance that he needs to
Mhm.
get back on his medication to help him focus. It's basically focusing and helping with the impulsivity. So yeah,
That's interesting, that he requested it, and that he knows
yeah,
the difference in how
the
he was.
difference. Yes,
Yeah, because most people are like, rejecting it. Oh, they don't want to take it, or for some reason they didn't probably get the right one that worked for them. But that's really
Right.
interesting that he's able to recognize, that he
Mhm.
was
Yes.
more productive in how his life was with it. So that's great that you guys, that you're there supporting that, because your daughter was on my show and she talked about how you were there for her, right? When she was younger, you recognized that she was going through something. And it's just, I've just felt so happy to hear her talk about how you were there for her when she needed somebody, and you recognized and you
Absolutely.
got her the help that she needed, and she was able to go to you. So you're her hero, I know for sure, right? Just on, just talking to her about how you supported her and who you are to her. So it's interesting, right? It's different because when she was like 14, you had a new baby, right? And then now it's like she's 30 with grandkids, with kids, and then you have still a kid, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting, parenting like in all those ways, grandma to ma of a 30-year-old, 17-year-old. You go a lot of different levels with each of them. Let's shift and talk about spirituality and yours spiritual journey. Talk about what I know. Yeah, tell us your spiritual journey and where you are today in regards to spirituality.
Ooh, that's a big one. Okay, well, spirituality. I grew up um in a Baptist household,
Mhm,
southern mom and South American dad. My dad is Guyanese. He came from Guyana, born and raised in Guyana. Came here as a young man to for his education, and met my mom here in New York. Um, from a child, my biggest um anything to do with church or religion came from my grandma, my
mhm,
maternal grandma, my mom's mom. That's who we woke up with and went to church.
mhm,
Went to church with. My mom is a spiritual person, but she doesn't really go to church. And I think it had a lot to do with the fact that she didn't have time to go to church.
mm,
My
mhm,
mom worked so my mom worked so many different jobs and took care of everyone from her children to her parents that were both seniors at the time, and her plate was full. So for her to get up and dress seven children and take us to church, it was just a lot. But I know she's a God fearing woman, and I know she knows the word, and she knows her God.
mhm,
So everything as a child that is church related came from my grandma.
mhm,
Um, and I would get myself up and I would go with my grandma to church. And when she passed, I still carried that. I would get up on Sunday mornings and dress myself and go to church on my own.
mhm,
Um, and I always had a connection with God. Um, as I got older, um, I was just still, go to church and, Baptist church mainly, and worship.
mhm,
I would visit different ones just in search of a church home, someplace that I fit in, someplace that I would fit in. And I found a few.
mhm,
Um, the most recent church that I attended was First Corinthians Baptist Church here in Harlem on 116th Street. A member there up until recently, pre-COVID. But I've always had an interest in other religions. I never just, um, took Baptist religion for face value. I would
mhm,
always, I have friends that are Jehovah Witnesses. I would listen to what they had to say. I have friends that, or 7 Day Adventists. I would listen to what they had to say.
Mhm.
I have friends, brothers that are Israelites. I have
Mhm.
cousins that are Black Jews. You
Mhm.
know, I you know my fiance. My fiance is Muslim. You know,
Mhm.
um, so I was never that type to just shun any other religion other than Baptist. I was always open and willing to learn and experience and find out other religions, how they differ, how are they alike, what do they word, what do they scriptures say, and educate myself on that. And to each his own. They're all, it's one God.
Yeah,
It's one God.
yeah.
It's
So
it's
we
about.
would. I am an interfaith, interspiritual minister, which I study all religions, right? And so I would
Hmm.
say that your relationship is an interfaith one, where you're Christian and he's a Muslim, right? Um,
Yes.
how can you talk about so the mix? How does that work? With him being Muslim and you being Christian in your household, you just practice both. You do the Muslim things and does he did in the Christian things. Is that how it works for you guys?
Well, for the most part, in our household is set up where we're a God fearing household. You know
Okay.
what I'm saying? We're
Mhm.
a praying household.
Mhm.
And we get the foundation from that. Regardless on what God we pray to, we're
Mhm.
we're a praying household.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, he's Muslim,
Mhm.
and it's Ramadan right now, and I'm fasting with him. Am I Muslim? Absolutely not. But I
Mhm.
know that during this month of fasting, this is something that we can do together as a couple, and it brings us closer together. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
if it's anything that we'll benefit as a couple, I'm for it.
Mhm.
So if that means me turning down my plate for 30 days and praying even harder and getting to
Mhm.
better understand where he is with his God and getting a better understanding of what the Muslim religion is about, 30 days is
Mhm.
nothing. I'll do that. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And there's some things
Mhm.
that I can
Mhm.
pray on and
Mhm.
fast and turn my plate down for. I'm okay with that. I'm sipping my water because we just broke our fast and I'm quite thirsty.
Right, go for it. Yeah, it is
So,
interesting that, yeah, managing the two and being comfortable with each person. I like what you're saying. You're a praying household, and I know prayer is they Muslims pray, Christians pray. Prayer is a common denominator. Is what I wanted to
yes,
say. And as a praying
yes.
household, him being Muslim and you're Christian, it works because prayer is prayer, right?
And we
Um,
hit our knees the same way.
yeah, exactly. Do you find that fasting, how does fasting support you when you do the Ramadan? Do you become more enlightened? Well, what happens during this time of a whole month of fasting and praying?
Well, I during fasting, this is my I want to say my 6th year of fasting with him.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
When the first year I didn't last 2 weeks.
Okay.
The second year I did it, I was able to do the full month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every year that I do it, I get more and more a better sense of clarity. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I get a better understanding because it's not all the time that that I'm praying throughout the day, but it's certain things that I stay mindful of, the way that I talk to people, the way that I, treat people, um,
Mm-hmm.
the things that come out of my mouth. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm more mindful, and I try to be more sensitive to that during my 30 days. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And
mhm,
and those are things that I pray for after the 30 days as well, to have have a better sense of that spirituality, to be more like God. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
And I think
mhm,
that it helps. You know what I mean? And
mhm,
this is
mhm,
something, and even for Lent, you might turn down, you might okay, I'm not going to take sugar, I'm not going to eat sugar for the 30 days. Okay, that's easy, but it's not a lot of people that can turn down their plate,
mm,
and pray and really ask God for um what you need and what you want, and just be thankful. Just show a sense of
mhm,
gratitude for those 30 days. And
mhm,
every year, it gets a lot easier for me. So by the
mhm,
second or third day, I'm good. You know what I'm saying? By
mhm,
the second or
mhm,
third day, fourth day the
mhm,
most, I'm okay. You know what I'm
mhm,
saying? I'm used to it. I'm in the rhythm. Where I want to be right now is a lot, is praying more. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
Because
Because
I
the
know that
goal
you're
is to
supposed to
right.
be praying throughout the day, and I
Mhm,
want to be able to say that I'm praying more throughout the day. I'm not,
mhm,
and really just and how I pray as well. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
Because I'm
mhm,
that type of person. My thing is, prayer for me. I could be at the kitchen sink and I'm just talking constantly. I'm just in my head.
mhm,
I'm praying.
mhm,
I could be bathing in the shower and I'm
mhm,
praying. I'm talking.
mhm,
I'm giving
mhm,
thanks. You know what I'm saying? I don't
mhm,
necessarily have to be in a fetal position, or
mhm.
you know what I'm saying, but to be able to just be on a train and just
Be
close
in
my
prayer.
eyes and just get
Mhm,
think right. So that's
mhm,
that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at now, as far as my fasting
mhm.
for right now, for this year in Ramadan. Yes.
Good. Um, what would be your top three? You know how I talk about the spiritual toolkit, and we all have our own personal spiritual toolkit that we have our practices in, right? The
Hmm.
practices that support us, that give us clarity. As you say, you're getting clarity now, or if you're angry, or if you're sad, or if you're stressed. What would you say would be your top three go-to practices that support you?
That
I know
support me when
prayer
I'm
is one, right? Look at me. I know prayer is one because you're a praying household. Any other practices, spiritual practices that you do?
not really,
Well,
not
okay.
really, not
Mhm.
really. When I feel like I just take that time. I just allow
Mm.
myself to take that time. I get in a quiet place. I like to be alone. I like
Okay.
to be alone when I'm feeling, in a spiritual, like spiritually drained,
Mm.
or even when I'm spiritually emotional. I like to be in,
Mm.
in, in my own little quiet space, so I can
Mhm.
be quiet, so I can hear. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Because
Mhm.
in the midst of my chaotic life, I have so much going on in my life. Um, I don't get to really hear what he's telling
Mm.
me. And when I
Mhm.
can get in a little quiet space, whether it be in my bedroom, whether it be in my living room, when I'm home alone, I appreciate those moments because I can just tune everything out and I can just listen. And once I
Mm.
listen, I can hear what he's trying
Mhm.
to tell me. Sometimes it's just like it gets to be a lot. You know what I'm saying? I'm being pulled from different places
Mhm.
and I got a lot of things going on. But if I can
Mhm.
just get in my little quiet space and just
Mhm.
shut down and just be quiet and
Mm.
shut my mouth,
Mm.
I can hear what
Mhm.
he has to tell me, and that works for me. That works
Mhm.
for me.
That's pretty cool because it's where you're giving your praise and praying and asking and being grateful. Then I always think about, when do you hear what God is saying to you, right? If you're always,
Mhm.
because in prayer you're doing the praying and the being grateful and the asking and all of that. But when do you get to hear what he's saying to you? And what you have to
Right.
really pay attention, right, to hear your message and hear what's being said, right?
Yes.
And I think that when we talk about mental health, right? And everybody, like now with COVID, and still, we still, for me, I still don't know what's going on, right? At this point, right? Because it just keeps shifting, it's just shifting, right? Mental stability is really important, right? And finding ways to stay sane, right? And finding ways to just not freak out about everything that's going on is really, really important. So I think about the different practices and the different things that we have to do to stay really sane right now, right? Even me, I find myself like, I have like a great practice where every morning I'm doing my meditation and I'm doing my listening and my praying and everything to just support me through getting through the day, right? And I like to share with people like the different things that they can do to support them to get through the day. And I feel that spiritual practices support you so much, and how many people can tune into what they are, right? Have the
Yeah.
time to take a moment, yeah, and say, oh, well, let me find something that's going to support me. And if we look out here in the world now, it just seems like people are acting weird and crazy, right? Everywhere you look, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, what we got to get the message out, like, breathe, take a moment, take some breaths, right?
Yes.
Some way. Um, to kind of bring it back. One thing that we don't have a few moments left, but for your kids, right? Um, are they going to church? How are you instilling in them practices and things that they could do to support themselves?
That's interesting that you mentioned that because Akira went to church most of her youthful life.
Hmm.
Clarence, not so much, but he hit his knees every morning before he leaves out this door. Before
Wow.
he walks out of this door, he
Hmm.
gets on his knees, and I thank my fiance for that.
Mm.
I thank my fiance for that because
Hmm.
um he knows we pray.
Hmm.
He knows we pray, and I've prayed with him before, but I
Hmm.
never made him pray for himself.
Hmm.
And and since my fiance is coming to his life, which is his dad,
Hmm.
every morning before he walks out this door, they hit their knees together, and he makes him pray for himself before he leaves this house. Um,
Mm.
and I think that that alone, because prayer changes things. So I
Yeah.
think that alone helps ground him and helps get him where he needs to be spiritually,
Hmm.
emotionally,
Hmm.
mentally. You know what I'm saying? It
Hmm.
calms him. And when he knows that if he can hit his knees in the
Hmm.
morning before he leaves his house, and that feeling that he feels when he prays, if he can take that with him, and
Hmm.
when he start that feeling in the cafeteria, if he recite that prayer, or if he's on the bus and that feeling comes over him, he can pray. You know what I'm saying? We're trying to get
Hmm.
him in the state of mind that no matter where you are, if that if something takes on you or jumps on your back, any demon comes against you,
Hmm.
say that prayer, and a
Mhm.
sense of calmness will come. You know what I'm saying? Even with
Mhm.
my grandkids right now, when they come over and
Mhm.
me ma, I want to eat, me ma, I want to eat. Okay, I prepare them something to eat. They start digging, and I said, "Did you bless that food? Did you
Mm.
did you say thankful thank over that food?" And they say they
Mhm.
little one or two, we starting out to teach them how to pray. Yes,
Mhm.
because I think
Mhm.
that is so important. And I think with our daily lives, a lot of times we know who he is, but just a simple thank you,
Mhm.
just a simple thank you, and we have to be more conscious of um of our spiritual space when we go through our day-to-day life. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because So many things are happening out here. It's only by His grace that it's kept, and we gotta be more thankful. And that's all.
Yeah.
That's all that's required. It's nothing. You don't have to say no extravagant,
Mm,
drawn out. I know praying warriors that, man, they start praying, Grenada. They start rolling off their tongue. I say, wow, I want to pray like them one day. You know what I'm
mm,
saying? But I'm gonna
mm.
pray like me today. I'm gonna
Right.
start off with a simple thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly.
start off with a simple thank you because at the end
Mm-hmm.
of the day, that's all He wants.
Mm-hmm.
You know, He doesn't require much, just a thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Wow. Well, it's been really good having this conversation with you. I'm excited that you were able to join me and just share. I love doing this show because we get to share with people that are watching. We get to like just touch. I say we want to touch, move, and inspire people by what our stories and the things that we're doing. Somebody could hear something tonight and take it away. Like just saying thank you is a prayer and being grateful and gratitude. So I am
yes.
grateful that you were here able to join me tonight. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank you, my
right.
sister.
Love you. I'll see you soon.
Love you more. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Thank you for joining me tonight on Conversations with Reverend G. I'm here every Monday night from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on WEMS Radio Live. You can find us on Instagram and also on YouTube. I will be back next week, but in the meantime, I would just like to say gratitude is one of those practices that really supports me. And that you can find me every day on Instagram as Rev Granetta and on Facebook as Reverend Granetta Mason. I am grateful for all of you. Have a beautiful week, and I will see you again right here next week.